How's it going, guys? Your average student here, back with another video. I know I promised you I was going to make a video based on my college experience as a freshman, but what I really wanted to focus on with today's video is WWDC. Now, if you didn't already know what WWDC is a worldwide developer conference, and specifically what we're talking about is Apple's WWDC event that just happened yesterday, June the 5th. And if you haven't kept up with any of the news, there were some pretty big announcements. Apple said specifically that they had 6 different announcements to give. However, today we're going to focus on 5, and here's why. The first announcement they gave was just announcing that Apple TV was going to expand with the new UI, kind of refreshed, as well as Amazon Prime Video, which is definitely good, but there's not much to go in depth with. Let's talk about first the new Apple Watch interface. And essentially what they cover is being able to interact with different Apple Watches. So as opposed to giving a completely different UI interface, you're given a few new watch faces. Specific things that they really seem to focus on is activity, and physical activity specifically. Being able to compete with your friends and being able to interact with them on a closer level with different fitness apps. Now, if you want to know more exactly about what watchOS is going to bring, I'll leave a link down below. But essentially, watchOS 4 is giving you a lot of new faces with Toy Story, a new Kaleidoscope face, and even a new Siri face. And being able to interact with other people with Apple Watches in many different ways that wasn't possible before. The second thing I wanted to talk about is the HomePod. So essentially, Apple doesn't want you to call the HomePod a smart assistant. They really seem to emphasize the fact that this is a smart speaker first before it is a smart assistant. Now in the demos they showed, they really seem to focus on the quality of the speaker. You have 6 tweeters built in within the speaker, as well as an amplifier and a subwoofer. So the idea is Apple's going to give you a really good smart speaker that can actually detect where you place it. So essentially it's a cylindrical shape that has the 6 speakers pointing in different directions. And if some of the speakers are facing backwards away from you, it'll be smart and trying to reflect the sound to make it go towards you. Now this is going to be just like Alexa, where you can actually say, "Hey Siri," sorry if I triggered any of your Apple devices. So we'll see how that turns out. So number 3, iPad Pro. The new iPad Pro is essentially what you would expect in the evolution of an iPad. You get a way better A10X processor, which is essentially a hexa-core processor, and then a 6-core GPU. But one of the biggest things that they really busted out of nowhere that no one expected with the new iPad Pro is the new display. So now the iPad Pro starts off at 10.5 inches and you're still given the 12.9 inch variant. They cut off the 9.7 inch, but the new 10.5 inch is about the same size physically as the 9.7 inch. They just cut down a lot of the bezels. That display is now brighter, more color accurate, but the big thing is the new refresh rate. So a lot of you may not know so much about what's called refresh rate in hertz, but essentially they doubled the refresh rate of your display up to 120 hertz for the new iPad Pro. And what that does is essentially makes your UI, makes everything day-to-day tasks, web surfing, even video games, a lot smoother. So when we talk about hertz, we're talking about typically frames per second. So when they say 60 hertz, that means your display refreshes, you can show up to 60 frames per second on a display. Essentially, the more frames you have, the more smooth your display is gonna look. So by doubling the refresh rate, essentially double the smoothness. But they also really improved on the camera, which I don't know if you take photos on an iPad Pro, regardless of how good it is, I don't think you should be taking pictures on a tablet at all. And they also doubled the starting capacity from 32 gigabytes to 64 gigs. That is available for pre-order now, and I believe it launches sometime next week. Now the fourth thing I really want to talk about is iOS 11. Now what iOS 11 brings is a bunch of new features for the iPhone. There's not so much a huge UI interface change. One of the biggest things that they really brought up and really focused on throughout the keynote was a new function with Apple Pay within iMessage. And that is being able to pay your friends. So you know, with your Touch ID enabled iPhone, you can go to a lot of retailers and pay with Apple Pay. But you haven't actually been able to send money within each other using Apple Pay. So essentially it's like a built-in Venmo, if you know what Venmo is, or even a PayPal. And so essentially with people with other iPhones, you can pay with what's called Apple Cash, I believe is what it was. And you send each other money, and with that money you can either use to send to other people in the future, or you can just transfer straight to your bank account. Another huge thing that I'm actually pretty excited for is being able to translate with Siri. You should be able to talk into Siri in a different language, such as German, French, or Italian. And there's a couple of other languages that are being included at launch, and then be able to translate it to English. And then there's just a couple of other improvements within photos, a whole UI design change in photos. Navigation is now going to give you lane assist. In other words, they're going to help you actually tell you what lane you should be in if you're going to come into a turn. And they're actually going to even be able to give you specific layouts of certain airports and other famous landmarks. The App Store is also getting a huge improvement. And then there's just a couple of other things that's just too much to get into depth, but that's essentially the big things with iOS 11 on the iPhone. On the iPad, on the other hand, you're getting a whole suite of things. On the iPad, you're given an actual file system, which allows you to track different files in between your computer that you may have on iCloud or other files that you have saved onto your iPad. So what this tells me is that Apple's really pushing into the direction of making your iPad Pro be able to function as a PC replacement. Now, it may not be a full-fledged PC replacement, but you can actually leave your PC at home, be able to work on documents on the go with your iPad Pro, and they even had a demo showing photo editing on the iPad Pro. There's a whole list of new productivity features for iOS 11 on the iPad Pro. If you currently own one, you should be excited. And lastly, what I wanted to talk about are the new Macs. Apple refreshed the entire iMac line. You're getting new Intel Kaby Lake processors, Radeon Pro GPUs as standard, better, brighter, more color accurate displays, as well as more port selection. These new iMacs now support VR, and the MacBook Pro lines have been given a Kaby Lake refresh as well. But the real star of the show, which came out of absolutely nowhere, was the iMac Pro. The iMac Pro has a Boss 10-core processor, can be configured with up to 18 cores, new AMD Radeon graphics, which hadn't been announced yet, and it's covered in this beautiful space gray finish. So that's it for today, guys. That's all I really want to talk about, is give you guys an update with what happened at WWDC. I told you in this channel what I really want to focus on is also obviously the college life and the whole experiences I go through, and give you guys advice, but I also wanted to focus on some tech. So this is going to be my first attempt at being able to cover some tech. Please subscribe, leave a like, and I'll see you soon. Stay humble, hustle hard.